Welcome Junior Tuckies to another video dealing with blood vessels. We've done one video on the heart and this one follows on from that. So let's get down to it. We're going to be looking at the structure of the different blood vessels and how the blood vessels assist in the circulation of blood in the body. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at arteries and veins, and you can see that looking at arteries and veins, both are present in the circulatory system and they have a unique structure. I've identified the tunica adventitia already on an artery, and that is the connective tissue layer on the outside of a blood vessel that gives it its structure and its strength. We're going to be looking at the smooth muscle tissue that makes up the arteries and the veins, as well as the endothelium, which is the inner lining of cells of the different blood vessels. The lumen, the inner diameter of each of these, is also a comparative point when we try and differentiate the function and the structure of arteries from veins. Blood flow from the heart to the body cells or to the lungs. We have blood being transported away from the heart in arteries and then back to the heart in veins. A point of error that students normally make is they think that arteries only carry oxygenated blood, but this is not true. Arteries carry blood away from the heart and veins carry blood back to the heart, regardless of the circulation that this blood is moving through. Right, just to recap quickly, the three layers that we're going to be talking about is the tunica adventitia, which is the outer layer of connective tissue on the outside of these blood vessels. We're going to be looking at the endothelium, which is the inner layer of tissue of the different blood vessels. And an interesting comparative point here is that the endothelium of veins also comprises little valves to prevent the backflow of blood against gravity. So there is a very, very important structural difference between arteries and veins, is that veins actually have little valves to prevent the backflow of blood. And then looking at the smooth muscle tissue that make up each of these blood vessels as well, we can see very clearly that there is a much thicker smooth muscle layer to arteries when we compare to veins. So let's quickly look at a capillary in a little bit more detail, because that's the blood vessel that we haven't really focused on up to this point. We can see that a capillary is very, very unique. It is one cell thick. The importance to this is that that is an adaptation that allows for rapid diffusion of carbon dioxide and waste out of the blood when we get to the lungs, and then oxygen and nutrients back into the blood when we're talking about gaseous exchange. One very common question that normally comes up when we look at arteries and veins is that we need to tabulate the differences. And in this case, I've included structural differences, because that's an important point here. We're not only looking at the differences between arteries and veins, but we need to look at the differences in terms of their structure. Sometimes, as part of a question as well, it could say visible structural differences when you get given an image. So it's important to see which of the differences are illustrated in that picture. For us, at this point, we're only looking at the structural differences between arteries and veins, and we're asked to tabulate these for 5 marks. So the first thing to do is to make sure that I draw a table to put these structural differences in. I need to make sure that each of the columns of the table has a heading. In this case, it's arteries and veins. And you can see I've put the first comparative point in there, the first difference. And we know that arteries have a much thicker smooth muscle layer, whereas veins have a much thinner smooth muscle layer. And this is definitely a structural difference. If we look at the next point, veins have valves and arteries do not have valves. These are the most common comparative structural differences between arteries and veins. Now you might wonder, where's the heading? Well, I've left that for last because I just want to show you how easy it is to put a heading together. When we're talking about a heading, or when we look at a heading, it's important to put the variables in the heading. What we are comparing here are arteries and veins, so those two definitely need to be in my heading. And if we write it down correctly, we're going to say that these are the structural differences compared between arteries and veins. And there I have all of the variables for my heading, and I should get 5 out of 5 for this question. Right, thank you very much for tuning in. Please be sure to watch the other videos in the series to get a better understanding of life sciences in grade 10. Tune in again. See you soon.